Chapter 13 of Dead Men's Shoes. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mary Herndon Bell. Dead Men's Shoes by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Chapter 13. The Sweets of Life. Not a word has been said by Mr. Trenchard as to his testamentary intentions in reference to his three nieces. But in the mind of Redcastle, it is an established fact that Sybil is to inherit the bulk of her uncle's property. The other two girls will get something, no doubt, Mrs. Stormont remarks obligingly to Mrs. Groshen, the banker's wife, as these two ladies take their afternoon tea together ceremoniously in the Stormont drawing room, a spacious apartment with a good deal of white paneling, gold molding, and looking-glass, and not much besides in the way of furniture. A barren tract of Brussels carpet, with an islet here and there in the shape of sofa, ottoman, or coffee table. The other two girls will get something, of course, $200 a year each, perhaps, and a very nice income, too, for young women not likely to marry. But mark my words, Mrs. Groshen, Sybil is the heiress. Mr. Trenchard positively dotes upon her. Do you think her pretty? Asked the banker's wife languidly. She has been esteemed a beauty in her time, on the strength of an aquiline nose and a large pale blue eye, and she does not particularly approve of these new lights. Well, yes, decidedly pretty in her peculiar style. Features rather too sharp, perhaps, and a sad want of color. The Miss Stormonts rejoice in vivid complexions, but she has fine eyes. Yes, fine eyes, assents Mrs. Groshen, though I cannot say I like their expression. No more do I, says Mrs. Groshen warmly. Perhaps the nicest thing about her is her manner. She has really charming manners. Yes, very agreeable manners, drawls Mrs. Groshen. If they were not so painfully artificial. That's the very thing that struck me, says Mrs. Groshen, brightening. The banker's wife rustles home in her silk attire and tells Mr. Groshen at dinner how the Stormonts are trying to catch Mr. Trenchard's niece for their empty-headed son, Frederick. This Mr. Trenchard is very rich, I suppose, she says interrogatively. Enormously. I wish he'd keep an account with us, replies the banker. Sybil accepts all the homage Redcastle can offer her with a tranquility which raises her not a little in the estimation of the elite. She takes Mrs. Stormont's somewhat oppressive kindness as a matter of course, and is unawed by the splendor of the Groshens' dinner table, which for plate, china, glass, floral decoration, and hothouse fruit takes precedence of other tables in Redcastle. I don't pretend to do things as Mrs. Groshen does, the Redcastle matrons inform one another apologetically. We can't all be bankers. Mrs. Stormont volunteers her services in escorting Sybil to concerts and other local entertainments, which a man of Mr. Trenchard's age may not care to patronize. Stephen Trenchard is quite willing that Sybil should take advantage of these friendly offers, but to his surprise, and perhaps gratification, the girl refuses. I am very fond of music, Uncle Trenchard, she says, but I shall not go out of an evening without you. That would be a pretty way of keeping you company. But, my dear, there is some difference between 70 and 20. Crabbed age and youth cannot dwell together. Or, if they do, youth must have a holiday now and then. You are not crabbed, and I am very happy with you," answers Sybil. "Flatterer," exclaims Stephen Trenchard, not the less pleased.
"Artful hussy,"
thinks Mrs. Stormont, and by, in the course of that cutting and wounding which passes for conversation in Redcastle, that lady informs Mrs. Groshen that Sybil Faunthorpe is one of the deepest girls it was ever her fate to encounter. "She'll have that old man's money, my dear, every sixpence," says Mrs. Stormont emphatically. "Then your Fred ought to have her. Why, you see, my dear, these Faunthorpes are people of no family." "You mean that he has asked her and been refused," remarks Mrs. Groshen astutely. "I don't think a Stormont is likely to find himself rejected by a parish doctor's niece," replies the Colonel's wife, with suppressed indignation. "As to Mr. Trenchard's fortune, it is nothing to boast of, after all. It has all come from trade." This is a thrust at the banking business. "I fancy that is the source of most people's money nowadays," returns Mrs. Groshen blandly. "Professional men seldom seem to have much." Hereupon the two ladies, having indulged in a few friendly passes on their own account, return to the slaughter of the absent, and kiss each other affectionately at parting. Sybil's dissipations are therefore, by her own desire, confined to those festivities in which Mr. Trenchard is bidden, and which take the dignified and substantive form of dinners. No one could think of inviting the master of Lancaster Lodge to come in the evening. Dinners of first quality, A1 at Lloyd's, are those to which Mr. Trenchard is bidden, and very splendid are the banquets with which at longish intervals he gratifies his friends in return. Wonderful is the regard which Redcastle has for Mr. Trenchard, and its eagerness to win and retain his friendship. It is not to be supposed that the elite have any expectation of profiting in a direct manner by his wealth. They have none. But they like to adorn their table with a rich man. They like to put him forward as one of their best friends, and to know that less privileged people are smitten with envy. They invite him very much for the same reason that they buy costly fruit out of season, and waxen blossoms from the hothouse instead of homely roses ripened in the sun. He reflects